Recording yet?
Not yet. Oh yeah.
Okay, it is. All right.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So good morning, everybody. This morning's book club, we are doing Trevor Noah's memoir, Born a Crime. We have with us Ali from Iraq, Huda from Iraq, Ranjini from Malaysia, Shahira from Malaysia, Jennifer from Malaysia. Did I miss anybody? No, I didn't. Okay. All right. So Shahira's gonna get us started. So go ahead.
Okay, hi from my reading of Born a Crime by Trevor Noah. Um, okay, so first of all, it's a memoir, and I do read a lot of memoir. I don't have a particular chapters that I was very drawn to, but I noticed it's sorry. So it's a memoir of Trevor's childhood and teenage years being raised in South Africa. He was it was, I think, at the end of the apartheid era. So there's that race relations in South Africa between the whites, colored, and black. And when he was born, he says carnal relations. So the carnal relations between whites and blacks could be it was illegal, and they could be persecuted and jailed up to 5 years. So about the race relation, one thing that actually shocked me about the colored part. So he was born as a colored person, having two different heritage, but in the book it actually talks about how as a colored person you could be upgraded to a white, or you could be downgraded to black. And then there were also white families who were downgraded into colored, and when you were downgraded, you cannot live in a certain neighborhood anymore. So, the parents would have to make a choice whether for the whole family to move into the ghetto or get a divorce. The father would stay in the white neighborhood to earn a living, and the mom and kids would have to live in the ghetto. But like in the book, I read a review saying how it's like a letter to his mother, Patricia. So Patricia is steadfast. She's committed to raise Trevor in South Africa. In one of the chapters, Trevor actually said that when he was 17, 18, he met some mixed born South Africans, and they were raised overseas in Germany and Switzerland, and he thought like, we could have done that. Why didn't we do that? So the mother said something like, "You're South African. You were born here. I'm going to raise you here at home," and her mother is definitely a powerhouse. Like the whole family, he was mainly raised by females, and then Trevor Noah is a comedian. He's a stand-up comedian. He's on the Daily Show. So I think the memoir itself has some comedic tones, but I like how he interlaced it with the serious issues. So he talked about the colonialism. He talked about the apartheid. He talked about being an outsider. He's not black. He's not white, but in the end, he identified as black. I think it's because he was raised in a black household. But there was this one scene where the grandmother wasn't sure how to discipline him. If the grandmother beat the cousins, they're still black. But if the grandmother beat him, then he'll turn black and blue and red and green. And then he talked about religion. That was funny, right? Like white people calling us colored, but they're the ones showing colors. And then about religion, how his mother forced him to go to like 4 different churches. And then education, how he went from from private school to semi-public school. And then there's this gender roles issue, how the police were refusing to press charges against Abel for beating his mom. And then there was also the issue of his mom's sister. So his aunt was also beaten by the husband. despite the husband being, very scrawny, and the wife being a very large person, but the men feel like they have to assert their power in the marriage, so they'll be their woman. So just imagine if the police actually took Patricia seriously when she wanted to press charges, then she probably would never, because she was shot by Abel. So if the police actually took it seriously, then probably that thing won't happen. Um, but and then I like it how South Africa has 11 official languages. So English as the language of business, and then Afrikaan for whites, for the white South Africa. And then you have all these native languages. You have Xhosa, which is the mother's mother tongue, and several others. So the mother, Patricia, actually taught Noah several of these languages so that he could navigate his livelihood in South Africa, because he has that unique perspective of being a colored person in South Africa. So I think that's it from my reading.
Okay, brilliant. Actually, you covered a lot of issues. I'm going to kind of like go around the group, and then I will pick up on the similar issues that people are raising, but I will make sure I will raise the issues that you all have raised, because I'm taking good notes, I hope. All right, who's next?
Let me be next, Doctor, because I may have the same thought with Shahira.
Go ahead, Ali.
Yes. Also, I'm going to talk about the same issue or same topic that Shahira refers to, that is the Black and people.
One second. You all will say that you are doing the same issues, but I want you to kind of be more sensitive and pay particular attention to each other's discourse. You may think you are saying the same thing, but you listen to each other's presentation and discourse. You notice your choice of words are different. Mm-hmm. And it's based on that choice of words and that difference that you will take a different route into reading this particular book. Do you understand? You may look at each other and say, oh, okay, she's already said what I want to say. But the way you say it will show a different emphasis.
Of course.
So yeah, everyone's going to have that opportunity. So Ali, go ahead.
Yes, Doctor. So what I found at chapter 1, exactly at page 4, that you separate people into groups and make them hate one another, so you can run them all. What we see, Doctor, by this sentence, that Trevor illustrate us and show us how Trevor's shrewd understanding of how racism, power, and oppression intersect. He is well positioned to observe that most individuals are not that different from one another, no matter what their culture or race or language is. By focusing on arbitrary distinction, the apartheid government encouraged individuals to see others as fundamentally different, not to be trusted, because different groups such as Black and colored people would become preoccupied with power struggles and tensions. White colonial powers could more easily continue to maintain authority. So we see that Trevor shows us that none of the non-white groups in South Africa gained any power or influence as a result of racial separation, and that focusing on difference and mistrust in a way that individuals become trapped in cycles of being powerless. This is, as I see, Victor, that according to the saying, this means divide and conquer. Yes. And also I see at another chapter, chapter 4 exactly, when he say that so many other smaller incidents in my life made me realize that language, even more color, define who you are to people. This is show us that South Africa operates according to a strict system of racial classification, whereas one appearance largely determines what right and privilege one has. Then we see that Trevor find that people base their ideas of whether someone fits in or not, whether that person can speak a shared language. So we see that Trevor learns to speak multiple language. This is allow him to be fit or accepted by others and fit in different groups. Even if they initially assumed Trevor that he is an outsider. Over and over again, that Trevor builds trust by being able to speak to someone in their language, while he cannot alter the way he looks. Language is a skill he can develop. He can develop through his own agency. This gives altered a sense that he has some control over his fate. Then also for another statement that it say that for all that black people have suffered, they know who they are. Colored people don't. And this is exactly at chapter 8 when also show us that Trevor impacts or takes out some of the complexity around being a colored person in South Africa. How it is different from being black. So white colored people are somewhat better treated legally and socially. We see them that they have an ambivalent history and often lack of strong sense of community and identity. The black South African have. So for Trevor, unlike black people, he also observed that colored people often live in hope of being someday accepted as whites, and what makes them very quick to try to distinguish why they are better than the people around them. This is what I want to mention for this theme exactly, the black and white people or colored people.
All right, another brilliant presentation. Thank you very much, Ali. Next.
Thank you.
Who wants to go next?
I think I will go next.
Okay, dragging her feet.
There's a lot of issues covered in this book, but one chapter in particularly, I had so much fun reading it because it's so funny to me, and I actually can relate it in a sense because it's actually at chapter 7, like the first few pages in the end. He had a dog named Fufi, and then he said that Fufi was my first heartbreak. No one has ever betrayed me more than Fufi, because he thought Fufi was his dog, and Fufi in a way kind of like betrayed him because he went to find another love. So I kind of like able to relate to this because so like for example, I like cats, and it's like when I see stray cats and I feed them, you know, I thought that, oh, we had a bond, and then when I see them going to other people, I'm like, oh my god, how could you? So in all serious note of this book has to offer the reader, I kind of enjoyed his comedy sense in putting words. So for this chapter, he did learn a valuable lesson, and I like the quote that he actually put in: "You do not own the thing that you love." So in some chapters, he actually have this certain few sentence that really it's like a punchline. So he can uses different things. Let's say for a dog or something valuable, a pet, and it gives you like a lesson to like keep in mind. So yeah, that's my take for this book. That very cute Fufi. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. I mean, I'll make the connections later, but thank you, Jennifer. Yes, next. Who else do we have? We have Huda or Ranjani. Who wants to go first?
I'll go next, Dr. Ranjini.
Okay, Ranjani. Hi.
Okay, the first few things that I like about the book was, first, it's the type of book that makes me chuckle every few pages or so. So it's like kind of a fun, breezy read. And
Compared to the Yellow Bird.
yes, definitely.
We've come a long way, haven't we? Yeah.
Yes, definitely. Yeah. And kind of feel like a tribute to his mom, which I really liked. Another thing I like about the book is how he uses foreshadowing in his narration. I feel like the kind of particular technique of using foreshadowing is my personal taste. For example, in the first few pages, we already told that his mom pushed him out of a moving car one, and then the mom was shot in the back of the head. It kind of piqued my interest to read more, which kept me very interested. Yeah. But one thing I don't like is the way the narration jump from one timeline to another. I feel like a big chunk of it is missing, especially the information on how he managed to be a stand-up comedian and how he ended up being very famous. It made me a little bit disappointed because I wanted to know more. Like, what made him to go from, like, kind of a poor background to someone hosting a show, right? It's like, I don't know why. Probably he's thinking of doing another book. I'm not sure, but it made me like unsatisfied when I finished reading the book. Yeah. The point that I like to focus on is one, it's about not belonging, being othered. He has these distinct features that made him unable to mix with the group. Like either he's too light skin or too dark or too rich or too poor. It's like growing up, his whole life about growing up is not fitting in or not belonging to a particular group. He did mention this particular part. Sorry, give me a second. He did mention about page 179. I learned that even though I didn't belong to one group, I could be part of any group that was laughing. I wasn't popular, but I wasn't an outcast. I was everywhere with everybody, and at the same time, I was all by myself. I kind of like picked this thing, and it made me realize that language definitely helped him to mingle with everyone. But I feel like he didn't really belong to one particular group. And it made me realize that this particular condition of society where we like to form a group, and when groups are formed, we tend to exclude others that don't fit in. Like it made me think about the groups around my place and around me. It's like, for example, let's say we are looking at a bigger picture, and then there's like groups divided by race, let's see, and then we zoom in the certain group, and then, for example, it's not about being too Indian or not being Indian enough. So there's always something that we humans do that tend to ostracize others so that we can, I guess, we live ourselves. I'm not sure, it's just that my thinking. So reading this book, it made me realize that he didn't really fit and say that this is my group, this is where I belong. I feel like he fitted through, and then his whole life like not fitting in one particular group, and that's about it. Then another thing that the mother mentioned, she mentioned about not focusing on the past and moving on, which I feel like kind of I'm still divided about that.
Again, she focused on?
She mentioned about letting go of the past. It's not. Let me get the page again. Sorry.
Oh, Ranjini, is it the one that the mom on the telling Trevor like learn from your past and be better because of your past or something like that?
Yeah, she particularly mentioned, I since I've lot of highlighted, but I couldn't find the particular note. She mentioned about not thinking too much about the past, that we got to move on.
I think it's in chapter 5.
Chapter 5.
Mm-mm.
Do you remember the page, Jen?
Page in the hard version book, it's page 66, the last paragraph of the page. Like, my mom told me this thing, so I've never take for granted how we got to where we were. And yeah.
And none of it comes from a place. None of it came from a place of self-pity.
Yeah, is it that one?
Yeah, that's the one.
Learn from your past and be better because of your past. Is that the one?
Yes.
This is
Yes,
very,
exactly.
yeah,
Learn from your past and be better because of your past, she would say. But don't cry about your past. Life is full of pain. Let the pain sharpen you, but don't hold on to it. Don't be bitter. I feel like it sums up the whole experience of being discriminated, of this apartheid and everything. It already happened. Yes, it's done. We need to look past, because it's kind of a reminder for us to, it's like a lesson for us. But at the same time, we cannot linger on it anymore. It's done and dusted. Yes. Let's bid it a farewell and then look forward. Yes, we need to refer so that we don't repeat the same thing, but at the same time, I feel like we shouldn't hold on and keep thinking about it, keep talking about it, because it's going to make the pain, unbearable. So I kind of like this particular quote by the mother. Yeah, that's all from me.
Thank you very much, Ranjini. Huda. Huda? Huda, are you in?
Yes, doctor.
Okay, your turn. But your mic is muted.
Huda, turn your mic.
Yes.
You need to unmute your mic, Huda.
The internet is not. Internet. Can you hear me, doctor?
Yes. Better.
All right.
Better. Okay, it's all yours.
Shall I start? All right.
Yes.
In this book, it shed light on the 1927 Immorality Act. Even choosing the words, I think choosing the word is immoral. It is illicit carnal intercourse. Anyone from South Africa that do something like that, he will be punished 5 years for the imprisoned for men, 5 years, as for women 4 years. So this is the core of his book, I think. This is number 1. And I think Noah in his book, he is honoring his mom, Patricia. She's the symbol of resistance. She breaks almost every rules that the white government opposed on South African people, especially the black. She has a good education, living in white neighborhood, having affair with white European, and having a mixed race child. This is the penalty that, the punishment could be death. So I think the mother was not Zulu or Kusa or something like that. She is mixed and unique from both. Zulu are the warrior and the Kusa the intelligence and something like that. I think she's the mix of them. That's why Noah is a unique child and a young boy. He described, I like his, in page 54 when he said, Where is it? He said, Dad was the white chocolate, Mom was the dark chocolate, and I was the milk chocolate. So when the other kids in Soweto called me white, I just thought they had their colors mixed up. Noah described himself as similar, where is it? Similar to the other kids, still chocolate, just a slightly different hue with a slight different touch. As for the name Noah, I think it is thematic name, as if their prophecy that he will survive in this flood of discrimination and injustice, community. He is, his name from a prophet named Prophet Noah, who survived sailing in this great flood, and he survived. As for Trevor, he was survived because the mother was steering the ship. She is kind of an honest pirate. She's pirate because she broke all the rules, of the white government. She's honest pirate. She, as I said, she is unique because she's Zulu and Kusa, both of these tribes. As for Trevor, he refuses to define. He simply refuses to define himself negatively by, by attaching himself to one group. But instead, he defines himself positively by opening him to various people and various people, languages, and experience. That was his tool to survive in this divided world where he doesn't fit in any box, yet he coexists with others in harmony, not in isolation or in isolation. Okay. He has this ability to pick up various sides of various situations. He paves the way to the solution in his sense of alienation. He learns to bridge different communities and show what belonging was not depend on identity, but to choose and build himself, as unique. He got from both sides, black and white, because each one has his own privileges and his own characterization. But he used to say that I find myself at home when I am in black neighborhood, and he make this connection. As for his work, in cafeteria and selling goods in the streets of Alexandria, he makes this connection with wide variety of different identities, and he learned so much from the South African language and English as well. That's what makes him special and coexist he was capable to coexist with the black and white and become this unique blend of both sides. Thank you.
Brilliant. Wow. Okay. First of all, round of applause to everybody. It was really, really good. And you notice how you all are saying the same thing, but you're saying it differently. It is humorous. The book, it is filled with very painful experiences, but told in a way that you can stomach it, right?
Yes.
If you had read this memoir in a more serious tone, I don't think we'll be able to get through the book in the way we have been. That's the first thing to kind of like, we need to acknowledge that. So that being said, humor has a huge part in his life, his mom's life, as well as her relationship with him, and then his relationship with his society. This is something Shahira said that I want to pick up, and take it through what the rest of you are also saying. This notion of race relations. You've got the black and the white. But in his case, it's not just the binary. It's not the binary of black, white. It's not just the binary of in the position of power or in the position of the subordinate. It's not that kind of a binary. And Shahira pointed out how in his situation, he's got a very unique situation. He can either upgrade himself and live in a white neighborhood or downgrade himself, quote unquote, downgrade himself. So that kind of politics, position of authority, position of power, that's an issue of identity politics, where there is a kind of a hegemony between the have and the have not, and he is stuck in between. He's not in one or the other. Is everything okay? Yeah, okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And the kind of questions that when you think about your identity and in identity politics, one of the things that we ask is, who are you and how are you recognized by society? There's this notion of recognition politics by Charles Taylor. We'll talk more about this next week. That there is that sense of, when Shahira talked about how his mom said, you're a South African and you're going to be raised here. That notion of where you belong, to what extent do you decide that, and to what extent is it decided for you? Within the cosmopolitan studies, if you are a cosmopolitan, you can say that you are able to function in the cities. You're able to function in places where there's a kind of a more multicultural landscape. You don't need to say you're one or the other, but the minority issue is such that you do have to say that, or you are expected to say that. And you will see this in other minority fictions as well, where it's not just about your identity in private, but it is about your identity in a public setting more than in your private setting. That means it's not just who you are at home with your family, with your loved ones. Is who you are in a more open public setting that defines your identity. And that's what Charles Taylor talks about when he says recognition politics. How your sense of identity is how you are recognized by others. And what we mean by others is the authority, people in positions of authority and how they recognize you. So Huda talked about, was it Huda? Somebody talked about this. Let me just look at my notes. Yeah, Huda talked about the Morality Act, and that kind of like when your sense of identity and your ability to function in society is dictated by the law, something is wrong. There is a kind of restriction positioned onto you or imposed onto you that makes it illegal for you to just be who you want to be. It's almost like saying, there is this border and you just have to work within these borders. You cannot go outside these borders and be who you want to be. So there is that issue of you are being alienated by society because of your skin color. That's it. You haven't done anything to deserve it, but because you are born in a particular family with a particular skin color, you're automatically subscribing yourself to a particular rule of law that you did not choose to subscribe to, but it is imposed onto you. Are you following what I'm saying so far? Am I making sense?
Yes, Doctor.
Yes, Doctor.
Shahira?
Yep.
Ranjini?
Yes, doctor.
Okay. So there's a lot of things that can be further expanded. There's this notion of the third space. You're not one, you're not the other, you are in between. And the beauty is, how does he deal with being in between? This is something else that others have also brought up. I'm just trying to make connections with what others are saying, so that we see the link between the discussion. And this is something that Ranjini said, which I actually wrote down. You made an example, Ranjini, about race and how the race can either allow you to be part of the group, you belong, or you don't fit in. And you said something about not being Indian, not Indian enough or too Indian. And in that sense, that can be transposed into other contexts. Not Malay enough or too Malay, not Chinese enough or too Chinese, or not Arab enough, too Arab. Or whatever. Not Muslim enough or too Muslim, not fundamental enough or too fundamental. Whatever that kind of a binary that we constantly impose. And in that case, the binary is not between two groups, but within the same group. That kind of social hierarchy is something that is available in so many cultures, right? In Alice Walker's The Color Purple, it's the same thing. Silly is the character Silly is considered as like the lowest rank in society, and Shook Avery, who's slightly lighter complexion, she's like in the higher rank. And then you've got somebody else who's like even more fair, is placed higher. So the condition of the colored gives them a superiority. But in the way Trevor talks about this, you get the impression that it's not all it's not all that great, because you don't have a group that you can belong in. And that issue of belonging and sense of belonging, it runs throughout this book. And somebody mentioned about how the mother, Patricia, kind of forces the son into accepting the fact that this is who you are. No matter what others say, this is who you are, this is where you belong. That element of belonging. And how do you translate that sense of belonging? Language, Ali brought this up, how language and color define people. And that sense of language, can you learn many languages then? And can you belong to many groups of society, groups in society then? Because you know many languages. So there are many ways that we kind of deal with multiculturalism and diversity and the issue of diversity. But one of the key things is the question we need to ask ourselves: do we have the position of authority or power to do something about it? Like, are we completely vulnerable to the laws and like Morality Act and stuff? Are we completely exposed to that, or do we actually have a say in the way we choose to live? Can we then say, okay, I'm going to learn 5-6 languages, and I'm going to be able to communicate to people from different groups, and because of that, I'm going to be able to kind of relate to them? Is it as simple as that? Or do they then need to say, you know what, you're right. If you speak our language, you're all right. There's a line from K.S. Maniam in The Return, when one of the characters said, and I paraphrase this, I don't have the book here with me, this character doesn't trust anybody who doesn't speak her language. So the issue of trust and language, this is something that keeps coming back throughout the text that we have been reading as well. There is that element of, how do you trust somebody? Is trust based on the same skin tone? is trust based on the same race, but then Ranjini's point, you're not this enough, or you're not Indian enough, or you're too Indian. How do we navigate between that, like your opinion of being Arab or Indian or Malaysian would be different from somebody else, right? So how do we reconcile that idea, and how do we make trust something that is easy for us to live with? And then Ali brought up this idea of how one of the key success of the imperial powers was how they made people hate each other, or not even hate, at least distrust each other. And that was, like Ali said, this policy of divide and conquer, or divide and rule, where as long as I don't know what you think and how you see life and how you see the world, and as long as how I think about you is based on what I'm told, I will not trust you, right? But the minute you start to have a conversation like this, you open up the barriers and you start to hear each other's thoughts, you might actually think, you know what? Yeah, we think alike. You might come from a different place. You might have a different way of approaching life, but I like the way you think, right? So conversations actually allows for opportunities for societies to grow. And there is, somebody mentioned about harmony. There is value in that harmony, and that conversation may begin, as Jennifer rightly pointed out, through something as simple as humor. How else do you deal with the craziness that is racism? How else do you deal with this craziness that says, you want me to be treated this way because unfortunately I was born with this skin complexion? How absurd is that? That very logic of it is, by a stroke of luck, you were born with the fairer skin, and by a stroke of luck, I was born with the darker skin. And that darker skin makes it a crime? I haven't even done anything. It just doesn't make sense. And that sense. Hello? Yeah. I just want to kind of tie up all the things that you all have said so eloquently, the issue of language, the issue of color, the issue of trust, the issue of belonging, the issue of sense of place. Where is your place? And the issue of gender politics as well, and who said that? Patricia is like, yeah. Huda said this, that Noah's mom is basically the symbol of resistance. But what did she have to go through to live that life? Was it an easy life for her to live by? And I would love to read her memoir. I would love to find out, how did she become the person that she is? It couldn't have been easy, because she wasn't a person of colored skin complexion. She was black. She was Huda's right. She's of the warrior tribe, of the Zulu and Sa. That X is supposed to be like that, so instead of Sa, like that. How did she become the way she is? Who taught her that? Like, I would be so curious to find out, like, what made her want to resist what Huda said. She broke every rule that the white African government set for the blacks. And yet she still survives, and she still has a sense of humor. Who taught her that? Because it's so easy to just give up, don't you think? It's so easy to say, you know what, I give up. I can't fight this. There's no way I can fight this. But she continues. I'm very much into the growth mindset kind of a framework, where a lot of the times people give up easily, largely because we have a fixed mindset about our situation. We think that I can't do this. There's no way I can improve my life. There is no way I can get out of this situation that I'm in and find joy and live my life and dream the dreams that I dream, and live it to fruition. But she seemed to have it down, She seemed to know how to maneuver in that kind of a very bleak and dark times in South Africa's history. How did she do that? What gave her that sense? Was it her faith? Because she, like Shahira mentioned, if Sundays they go through like three or four different churches, and it's not like next door to each other, and they have to travel. Sometimes when the car breaks down, they have to travel from one place to another on the bus, and Sunday is their day of rest, but she spends it going from one church to another. It's enough that you go to one church, but she goes from one to another to kind of, is she escaping reality? Is she hanging on to something more than herself and her child and her life? So I would love to know her story, but I think based on what all of you have shared, I think you've gotten the story and the issues, and Ranjini's right also that there is a bit of a jumpy narration going, and there is a gap between his story as a child and coming of age story, and suddenly he's a comedian, internationally famous, known around the world. How did that happen? That would have been a great story to find out as well. And that quote is brilliant. Learn from the past, be better because of your past. Oh, isn't that just, that is so uplifting, to think that it's because of your past that you are better. That means no matter what happened in your past, you are better because of it, rather than despite your past, So there is that idea of the growth mindset. I love that concept very much. Okay, so yeah, so that's my summary of your brilliant readings of this memoir. Okay, now I unmute everybody, unmute your mics now. Now, just whatever thoughts, questions you can ask each other.
Doctor, sorry, in addition to what Ranjini say at this lecture, and exactly when she say I wasn't popular, but I wasn't an outcast. Do you hear me, Doctor?
Yes.
I want to add something about what Ranjini mentioned for in this sentence exactly. When she say that I wasn't popular, but I wasn't an outcast. I was everywhere with everybody, but at the same time, I was all by myself. This is also show us, Doctor, that when Trevor explained the social status he occupied in high school, while it most immediately describes the position he occupies in the school's social hierarchy. This sentence also reflects how he doesn't really fit in anywhere within South African society. Trevor has to largely keep his identity and origins a secret. So for Trevor, he doesn't actually belong to any of the major racial groupings amongst other students. When he was at that time, he learned to be skilled at highlighting the ways he resembles different groups, but never actually experienced a deep sense of belonging. So from this sentence exactly that Trevor mentioned for, we see that Trevor, even though associate or share different group or people, but he still never experienced the feeling of belonging. This is what I want to add to Ranjini speech.
Ranjini, did you want to say anything in response?
No, doctor. I think Ali sum it up perfectly. This is what exactly I wanted to say. Yeah.
I have a question for all of you. Do you feel like you belong anywhere?
For me, no.
Who said that?
Ranjini.
Okay, Ranjini, no. Why?
Because I kind of agree with the author where I think all of us like that, like in a sense that even in a group, there's always something not right, not fitting in exactly. For me, I think I kind of feel that way because I don't really fit in perfectly, just there, like hanging on there, but not exactly belonging to the group.
Anyone else?
Dr. Me.
Mm.
I want just to clarify something. Relating with the belonging, when I was in Iraq, I just hear or see something about that. For example, when I see a match in TV, some player trying to be out of the match, and the others trying to be in. I just say why he do that because of he don't feel belonging or the audience hear him something bad related with the racism. I just heard about that. But now these days, when I come here and more novels relating with this subject, I know exactly what the belonging means, what racism means.
Mm.
Yes.
Thank you. Anybody else? Do you all
Yeah.
feel like you have, do you fit in anywhere?
Probably
Jen?
yes and no at the same time, because it's like I kind of understand how he feels like, because he feels like colored. So in a way, I feel colored too, because Chinese community, it's like you understand that I'm not Chinese enough, apparently. So I understand him. So like, sometimes when you go to like you're in a group of Chinese friends, and then okay, you can talk to them and all, but at the same time you're not entirely in. But at the same time, if you mix with the English speaking people, you're not that as well because you understand Mandarin. So it's like, yeah, where do I go? I fit in at both groups, but at the same time I don't. So in terms of belonging, yeah, I do belong, but at the same time I don't. Which is life, I guess. Yeah.
Somebody else?
Can I say something? Oh.
Shahira?
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
go ahead.
I'm of two different mixed parentage. So my mom is a Malay and my dad is a Pakistani. But like in the family, I basically very much belong to both sides of the family. But with the outsiders, like the Pakistani community outside of my family, then sometimes it feels like I don't belong with them, because they would start pointing out features, like my features, my sister's features, and how we're not Pakistani enough. So that sort of kind of annoys me. So most of the time, I just don't bother.
Mm. Huda? Thank you. Huda?
As for me, doctor, I am Arab, I am Iraqi, my two parents, but my nature is the problem. You know, my mom, she is so simple, maybe naive. She is so simple and she kind that this gene I took it from her. So my nature, I am, spontaneous and simple, and whatever I think, I say it. Uh, but not now. I have this, silent thoughts with myself, and it will be a great gift and prize from God if I could find only one person that can, observe my nature, because my nature could be understood wrongly with others. So that's why I everyone think that I fit in with all the groups, but no, it is not. Huda is, I don't know. I feel lonely, especially when my family, all my family gone. But I try to harmonize with people because I love people, and I love society and be friendly and kind. warmth, you know, this warmth of the team. I need it so much. So that's why. But I have this silent, you know, thoughts with myself. Thank you.
Thank you. And the spontaneous nature that you talked about, is that a particularly Arab woman's characteristic? Because you said you're like your mom, quiet, and then you said, you know, you've got this spontaneous personality. Is that a
Yes.
particularly Arab woman's or Arab generally? Is that a particularly Arab personality to be spontaneous?
Yes. I don't know about my family. They are so spontaneous and frank and open. So that what caused so much trouble for them, because no one can understand somebody with this simple, you know, frank, can speak frankly in front of everyone. Even if that hurts that one, they will took it aside and say, you do something like that is wrong. They said, oh, as if I am, you know, I am the boss and I am lecturing them. So I try to, you know, get rid of this. It hurts me
You're
so much.
earnest. The word is, I think you're very earnest. It's like what you see is what you get. You don't try to kind of sugarcoat it, and you don't try to kind of hide it, or you know, maybe
I can't.
provide a lip service to others. I understand that very much. I think it's important for us to realize, as we hear other people's opinion, you know, from the outside, when you look at your friends, do you think any of your friends have issues belonging?
Not really. No.
Here in Malaysia,
No, just here, your classmates here. Do you look at
no,
each other and think, you know, I think she must have a lot of trouble fitting in? Do you look at it that way?
doctor, because of MCO, we don't have this connection and this fraction with others. That's why I don't know. I can't judge.
But if you look at your friends, your classmates now, like there's Ali, there's Jennifer, Ranjini, Shahira, you know, you go around the room. Do you feel like, you know, she must have trouble fitting in, or he must have trouble fitting in because, you know, he's different or she's different? You know, I think that the point I'm trying to raise is that sometimes from the outside looking in, you might look at that person and you might think the person is able to function very well. The person is able to maneuver through life with so much ease. He must fit in somewhere. She must fit in somewhere. So it's that sense of the outside looking in. But the minute you read their story, i.e. in this case, their memoir, you start to see the other point of view, the other perspective. You know, and then you start to also realize that a lot of the things that they are saying and experiencing and going through are things that you maybe have experienced or are experiencing or are going through. I think that's the point of connection that we need to constantly be able to make with whatever stories that we are reading. And the beauty of this one, Born a Crime, is because he is so humorous, you are drawn into the story, whether you realize it or not. You're just drawn into it. You don't have that moment where you're like, oh, this is too disturbing, I need to put this book down. Did you all have any particular moment when you were reading the story and you thought, this is too much, I can't take this is too much? Did you have that moment?
No,
For this book, no.
Not with this book.
Actually, I couldn't take the first 5 chapters, like first 3 chapters.
Because?
Because I don't know. I'm not sure. I'm actually not sure why. Because actually the first 2 chapters when I read it, it was very hard for me to take it in. It was very hard for me to imagine and everything. But after that, I don't know why. I just like, you know, take a chill, and then I just like read it from the start again. And that's when it clicked. So I'm not sure what happened, to be honest.
But Jen, I would say this with any story. I would say this: probe yourself on that point. Like, what was it about the story that I couldn't get into? you know, you need to be able to do that. You know, as a student of literature, we need to always ask yourself, like I said, like I always say, you know, with every story, not every story will speak to you. You know, you might not be able to understand or digest. You might know the storyline, but you might not be able to digest the story or the characters, and that's fine. But you need to ask yourself, what is it about this story that I particularly could not relate to? And what you said, the first 3 chapters, so I would probe that a little bit, because I want to know what makes me what is it about a story that draws me in, and what is it about a story that kind of like repels me, you know, that. So you want to know, you particularly would want to know. I would say this to everybody. You know, maybe the story is disturbing because it reminds you of some things. Maybe it's disturbing because you know, you recall a particular episode, something that troubles you, because literature has that power to connect with the recesses of your mind through imagination in a way that nothing else can. Because the story, when you're reading a story, something's happen in your mind that allows you to journey with the character, with the narrator. And when you are not able to, either it's as simple as the writer is a poor writer. You know, it could just simply be that the writer is so poor, that poor in a sense that he does not, or she does not have a good skill, does not master the craft well, and doesn't tell a good story. It could just be simple as that, but that's fine too. But it could also be something more. And the point is, you want to probe because you want to know, what kind of a reader are you? Who are you as a reader? What are the things that interest you? What are the things that disturbs you? What are the things that allows you to grow further? Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yes.
Yeah. So I think this is important for every text that you read. You know, I find violence very disturbing. I cannot handle violence. Also reflects certain aspects of my childhood, but I cannot read or watch violence for long. I will, you know, if I have to, I will just go through it super fast and you know, skim through it, because it does certain things to me. It triggers certain things in me. So I know that about myself. But so what that means to me is, this is something that I haven't understood and healed about me yet. You know, so I would say, whatever it is about this text that speaks to you, that doesn't speak to you, put it as a mirror. Make it like a mirror that reflects back to you aspects about your life, about your history, about your past, that you want to further explore. You know, Huda, you said something really, really powerful about how you want just that one person to be able to respect and understand and value your nature. And I think that is a plea that all of us have and want. Even those of us who are in relationships, those of us who are with our families, you know, we still want that, and we might not experience that to the degree that we can. And sometimes reading a book does that too. It doesn't take an actual person to be able to understand that. Sometimes you just read a book and you're like, oh my God, this person really gets me. You know, it's like
Yes.
you find yourself in a story, right?
Yeah.
So the point is, be open to that kind of experience, the painful ones, the uncomfortable ones, as well as the very, very comfortable one that you're like, oh my God, I want to meet this writer. Unfortunately, she's dead. You know, I'm 300 years late. You know, but if she was alive today, we would be BFF like nobody's business. You know, so so literature does that. I mean, I'm hoping that I'm talking to people who are passionate about stories, like I am. not particularly any one story, but it could be any story that you are into. It could be fantasy, it could be dystopian, it could be thriller, it could be murder mystery, it could be romance, it could be whatever your genre is. But I think stories does that. You know, you can find yourself. But if you can't, and if it's difficult to actually crack that text because it disturbs you too much, also probe, you know, also ask that question. All right, final thoughts before we conclude today's session. I'm going to go around. Ali, any final thoughts?
Just I want to say that Atlas Sector, the colored people are always confused and lost between those who are black and those who are white. So they don't know to whom they belonging. And this is the issue that we talking about.
I'll talk about this next week when we bring up W.E. Du Bois's notion of double consciousness on that point. Remind me. Hopefully, I'm writing it down. But yeah, that's an important point.
Yes.
But I would mind my discourse. I wouldn't say confused. Because saying that colored people are confused is like putting them down. You know. So I wouldn't say confused, but we'll probe this next week for sure.
Okay, inshallah.
Thank you, inshallah. Next, Jennifer, final thoughts.
This book is quite good to read for gender empowerment in a sense. It shows like for guys and for women. So I think this book is quite good for that issue too. Yeah, thank you.
Agreed. So which means if you are considering this text for your final project and you want to compare it on the issue of gender politics, find another text that is comparable to it from the literary canon. Good.
Okay.
Thank you. Ranjini?
For me, I like to point out again the gender issue. And then it kind of answers the age-old question of why don't they live, the abuser, right? So I think the author kind of sum it up quite nicely when he gives the perspective of why the mother is remaining there, not living. Yeah. I kind of missed that one out during my first reading. It made me realize now.
Yeah, because the grass is never greener anywhere. So where you are, you make the best of the situation, or go somewhere else and deal with some other tension that you might not understand or grow up with. So yeah, good point. Shahira, I'm just going around my screen.
This is my first time reading a book that touches on the apartheid in South Africa. And the chapter Go Hitler in the book actually talks about you have one traditional name and then you have one Christian or Western name. So he knows guys named after Mussolini and Napoleon and Hitler, and he talks about how the black South African viewed Hitler as, you know, somebody super powerful that at some point the black people had to go help white people fight against him, and he was basically the reason why the Allies were losing the war. So and then Trevor talked about how the colonialists colonized them but never taught them anything. So they have this, their historical knowledge is a bit distorted, and I find that really interesting.
Sorry, Shahira, I got cut off. Do you mind repeating that? I don't know
about
you talked about Go Hitler. Sorry?
Yeah, so how the black South African sort of viewed him as a hero figure because he's so powerful that the Allies, the whites, were losing the war. So I think in some sort of distorted way, being named Hitler is like being named after somebody super powerful and strong. So I just find that interesting, yeah.
Right. Okay. Cool. Thank you very much. The line got disconnected. Finally, Huda, final thoughts about this book?
Well, we have this verse in the poem that الأم مدرسة إذا علمتها. It means that the mother is a school. If you if you teach her well, she will raise intellectual nation. This is for first. And other one we have and old saying, I don't know if it is just Arab old say or maybe international. It says every successful man he has in his back up by successful and
Women.
faithful. That's why Trevor was very successful because he got his mother.
Mm. Mm. Okay. All right. Thank you very much, everybody. I think we had a very fruitful discussion, and this is a great way to kind of get our discussion on minority fiction going for next week. So for next week, we will probe this issue further. I want us to look at some of the issues that we've raised today and compare it with The Hate You Give, as well as two poems that we started the semester with, I Too by Langston Hughes, an African-American poet from the 1920s and 30s America, and Telephone Conversation by Wole Soyinka, the Nigerian. So we will continue the discussion next week, inshallah. So I will keep this recording available. You may have a look at it in our UKM folio.
Okay.
All right. Thank you.